Welcome back to Movie Bites. Today, I am going to narrate a dark comedy from France, titled, God. Unlike your handsome dream God who lives in heaven, the real God is nothing but a typical middle-aged man who lives in an apartment with his wife and daughter. Just like any typical middle-aged man, he is an abusive husband and a bad father. So instead of finding his happiness with his family, he decides to solve his boring life by creating a city called Brussels. However, it didn't bring any fun to him, so for his enjoyment, he creates animals of all kinds to live in the city. However, an animal's life is too simple and repetitive, so God gets bored of it eventually. Then he comes up with a brilliant idea. He makes a creature from his own image, which became the first man who he named Adam. The confused Adam roams around the city of Brussels naked. He doesn't understand where he is and why he is even there. Well, God didn't give any instructions, but he creates a woman to be Adam's partner. Adam meets Eve at the restaurant and soon after they start playing with each other. But then they suddenly figured out how to play the real game and boom, they made copies and scattered around the world. However, it would be too boring for God if everything was peaceful. Thus, he decides to wreak havoc by giving the humans reasons to fight each other. He enjoys the sufferings he inflicts on people as he watches them from his office through his computer. He is the only one that has access to his office and forbids his wife and daughter to enter. EA, who is God's daughter, is also bored with her life. She has been living in the same goddamn apartment for the last 10 years. She does anything to keep herself entertained, so she can distract herself from the miserable life she lives. During her free time, she watches sports, not out of interest, but because that's the only channel God allows her to watch. On the other hand, her mother is just a pitiful simpleton who follows whatever her husband says at the dining table. She always puts the fourth plate, because she still hopes her son JC will return, even though God says it will never happen. Just like her older brother, EA can perform all sorts of miracles. However, God hates it when he sees her manifest her ability. As he scolds her, EA gets upset with her father and tells him he is only jealous of her powers. EA knows that God is very frustrated with his miserable life and is indeed jealous of what she and her brother can do. God's computer is what he uses to play with human lives. This allowed him to alter some basic principles in human civilization and make them a universal law. Laws like the quantity of sleep being always 10 minutes more and telephones ringing just as someone enters the bathtub are implemented. This is, so God can annoy humans and cause them to have negative feelings. As a result, they can easily snap and bring entertainment to him. One afternoon, after enjoying his sick fun of playing with humans, God, who's exhausted, leaves the office. However, he forgets to lock the door. EA uses this chance to sneak into the office and finally sees what God has in here. She sees the computer in the middle of the room and goes through his files. There she discovers the cruelty his father has done to the humans. The next day, EA calls God out on his atrocious activities. Since God is nothing but an arrogant, egoistic slob, he begins punishing her by whipping her with his belt. God thought EA would learn her lesson and will now obey him out of fear. However, this only amplifies EA's desire to punish him for being a horrible father to her, and a terrible God to the humans he created. She decides to seek help from JC. She goes to her room and contacts him through his small statue, which she keeps. JC is more than willing to help his little sister out. He suggests her to go out and find some apostles like he did. There were already 12 apostles, and since their mother seems to like the number 18, he recommends she take another 6 apostles. He thinks this is the number they need to overthrow God. JC also advises EA to find these apostles through their father's files. She should also perform some miracles for them so they will follow her. Her brother adds that she should write a brand new testament as he did. However, EA doesn't want to be the next God figure. Thus, JC proposes that she has the brand new testament be about the apostles instead. The older brother tells EA that their father is nothing without his computer. He also says she can use the washing machine he has hacked into to make her escape. Now that EA has all the information she needs to overthrow God, she is ready to set everything in motion. The first step of her grand plan is to take God's keys while he is asleep. After that, she heads to the computer and sends a text message to every human on the planet. The text message contains the exact date and time when the receiver will die. She then escapes using the washing machine, where she finds a tunnel. Meanwhile, the whole human civilization is in turmoil because of the messages. People on the news discuss the credibility of these messages, but there are too many instances where people died exactly as was stated in their messages. Thus, people begin to believe its legitimacy and think about how they will go on with their lives. However, suspense is coming. As God eventually wakes up from his sleep, he learns what is going on with the world. As he discovers his key is missing, he rushes to his office and breaks in using an axe. But soon he realizes that EA has escaped through the washing machine. Meanwhile, EA reaches the end of the tunnel and falls out from a washing machine at the laundromat. The outside world mesmerizes her as she experiences her first rainfall. She finds a burger in the dumpster and eats it, and of course, she vomits the distasteful food instantly. Then a man named Victor approaches her and tells her that the fish burger she ate is made from out of standard whale meat. Seeing Victor, EA asks if he can write and assigns him the task of writing the New Testament. Then she requests he take her to the addresses of the 6 people she has chosen to be her apostles. She wishes she had a father like him. She eventually falls asleep, and Victor carries her. As they roam the streets, EA talks about her brother and wonders about heaven. Victor tells her that heaven is supposed to come after death, but EA tells him it's not true, since there's nothing after death. While they are on their way to find the first apostle, God decides to go into the tunnel of the washing machine to reach the human world. Going back to EA and Victor, they finally reach the house of the first apostle, Aurelie. Even though she learned the date and time of her death, Aurelie has changed nothing about how she lives her life. She has been using a prosthetic arm since she lost her right arm in an accident during her childhood. People around her want to be with her and others envy her beauty. She still lives a monotonous life. EA approaches her and informs her of her motives. She asks the woman to talk about herself so that Victor can write it down in the brand New Testament. After thinking, Aurelie tells the story when a hobo approached her. This hobo taught her that life is a skating rink and people often fall, which is fine. She says those words don't leave her mind, especially when she looks at herself in the mirror. She begins to tear up, which amazes EA since doesn't know how to cry. She collects Aurelie's teardrops using a small container. She also promises to show her a good dream. Later that night, Aurelie experiences a dream of her dancing hand, and gets to touch it again while Handel plays in the background. EA and Victor set out to find their next apostle, Jean. Jean had a normal childhood with the spirit of an adventurous child. But all that changed as he grew up and worked day and night in the lifeless corporate world. He had no family or loved ones to spend time with, so he maintained the same routine. After the revelation of his death time, Jean decides never to work again and sits in the park, passing his time idly. EA and Victor find him on the park bench, and they talk about fish and birds. Later, EA tells him that the bird watching them really likes him. Jean asks the bird if it has the means to be anywhere it wants, then why he is wasting time in the park. EA tells Jean that the bird asks him the same question. Those words strike Jean as a revelation, and he moves towards a new journey with the bird. In the meantime, God finally comes out of the tunnel in the laundromat. The laundromat is moving, covering God in laundry, soap, and bubbles. He meets a lady outside who gets scared, and pepper sprays him. When he goes out and tries to eat from the bin, he gets beaten up by a group of hooligans and lands himself in the hospital. After being treated for his wounds, he asks for some morphine for his pain because he invented the law. But when the doctor disagrees, he pushes him off and leaves the room. The next apostle EA and Victor meet is Mark, who is addicted to adult entertainment. There is not much he remembers about his childhood and his parents, except for the small caravan they used to live in. When he tries to jog his memory to find anything relevant, all he can remember is the image of a beautiful girl that didn't leave his memory for 2 years. He was never successful in getting dates with any of the girls, so he started watching online videos on how to get girls interested in him. The memory then overlapped with memories of other girls from his neighborhood. None of that worked since he came off as a creep. His experience with escorts gave him all types of happiness in life. However, he has run out of money. After learning about the time he has left before he dies, he decides to use all his money on women and escorts. EA asks him about his family and why isn't everything free on the earth. Mark doesn't have the answer to that, but EA tells him that he has a nice voice and should use it to make money. Mark decides to voice act for adult movies and meets a girl there. Mark and Xenia find similarities in their love for literature. They talk about Proust, and later Mark learns that Xenia is the girl from the beach. They develop a connection, and Mark invites her home. Later, both of them lie on the bed, holding hands. Meanwhile, God's wife finally turns off the annoying television in the apartment. In a perfect mood, she tries to clean the painting of JC and his apostles on the wall. But then she notices that there are 3 more apostles in it. She is delighted with the newfound peace she is having. Meanwhile, God visits a church in search of food. He tries to cut in line to get the food faster, but he gets beaten up again by people waiting in line. The priest stops the fight and offers him some food and kindness. He teaches him that God always asks people to love their neighbors. This angers God, and he tells the priest that he never said anything like that. It was his son JC who said that. He starts to rudely talk about the priest's past, causing the priest to lose his composure. Finally, he starts to punch God. The figure of JC on the cross smiles at the scene in front of him. EA's 4th apostle is Francois, who calls himself an assassin. Francois has been obsessed with death since his childhood. He lacks all forms of emotions when he sees death in front of his eyes. EA and Victor find Francois in a park trying to shoot at some people with a loaded rifle. EA asks him why he shoots people. As Victor notes down the information on the testament, she tells him that his music is Schubert and asks him to fire a shot at the woman with chestnut hair, who will pass by in a few seconds. The woman turns out to be Orly. Francois takes the shot, but it hits Orland's arm, which is made of prosthetics. Since neither Francois nor Victor knew about Orly's prosthetic arm, they think they just saw a miracle. Francois runs after Orly. He tries to feel her hand when he reaches her in an elevator, still not realizing it is a prosthetic arm. He is surprised that she isn't furious with his action. This makes him believe that they have a connection. Francois goes home and cannot stop thinking that this is love. He doesn't care about his family's presence anymore and goes to confess his love to Orly the very next day. He meets her again in the elevator and confesses his love while giving her a bouquet with his number. Orly doesn't answer and leaves the elevator, but she takes the flowers with her, allowing Francois to find peace with himself. Meanwhile, God's wife looks at another apostle, appearing in the painting, but she's still oblivious to what is happening. The 5th apostle's name is Martine. As a child, she was romantic and hoped to live a romantic love life, but sadly she ended up marrying a man that showed no interest in her. EA and Victor visit her in her house, where she tells them how her husband was relieved after knowing that she's going to live a shorter life than him. She tells them how she first hired an escort to experience some happiness, but it turned out to be a futile attempt as he later stole from her. EA tells Martin that she hears music when she looks at people, and every individual has their own music. She tells her that she has circus music, thus both of them set out to visit a circus nearby. In the circus, Martine makes a connection with a caged gorilla. She decides to take the gorilla home with her. At home, as EA sleeps on the couch, Victor sleeps in the open and chats with Martine. He tells her he can't sleep unless he sees the open sky. Victor served in prison for 6 months because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. After he got out, he couldn't sleep with a roof over his head, because he felt he would wake up in prison. Martine is happy with her new friend, the gorilla. As the painting in God's apartment changes again, Martine appears beside JC this time. In the meantime, Francois gets a call from Orly, who invites him to her house. Orly asks him how he knows that he loves her. Francois answers that he shot at her, but nothing happened when he followed her, which made him fall in love. Orly shows him her prosthetic arm, while Francis kisses it softly. His actions make Orly happy. They lie facing each other as they spend the night together. Around that time, God tries to get back into his house. However, he finds all the washing machines blocked. He roams around the city a bit, lost and completely stranded. But soon he finds EA near a lake. He starts to chase her and asks her to reboot his computer. While he tries to explain his miserable state, EA refuses to do anything. He gets angry and blames her for loving her mother more. When God tries to take her home by force, Victor blocks his way and tries to fight with him. EA tells Victor that it's not necessary as she can walk on water. Both of them cross the lake with ease. When God tries to do the same, he drowns in the lake. Later he is rescued by the same priest who punched him. The priest puts him with the immigrants in the church. The final apostle is a boy named Willie. He was always sick, starting from his childhood, and his family saw him as a burden. His mother even injected a synthetic anti-diabetic medicine into him. This led him to get an operation on his pancreas when he was 7. EA and Victor meet Willie at an abandoned place where he tells them about his decision to become a girl. This is what he realized he wanted to be on the day he received the date and time of his death. He also tells them how his parents let him become a girl as his last wish before his death. EA and Willie connect because they're the same age and spend time enjoying life for the rest of Willie's remaining time. EA shows him a dream of a glowing fish, singing Lumiere to him. EA tells him that his music is Lumiere by Charles Trent. Meanwhile, God is deported from Brussels because he doesn't have valid documentation. On the other hand, all the other apostles put their life in order, and decided to meet on the beach. They plan to support Willie, who is nearing his time of death. Willie asks EA if there is any way to stop the prophecy of their deaths. She tells him that her brother JC only told her to gather 18 apostles. They can only hope for a miracle. While they wait on the beach, they see a plane coming at them for a crash landing, which is a sign of death for people. EA's mother cleans the house in a happy mood at the apartment. When she enters God's office to clean it, she disconnects the computer's plugs so she can use her vacuum cleaner. This causes the computer to reboot. The computer shows a message to reinitialize it, and she enters code 18 to complete the process. The reinitialization process stops the death timer completely and the plane starts to work again. EA's mother spends time on the computer and changes the world entirely according to her wish. Men can be pregnant, and the ice caps have stopped melting from global warming. Victor releases his book, The Brand New Testament, and becomes a renowned author. On the other hand, God is stuck in Uzbekistan. He is working on washing machines and still desperately searching each machine unit for a passage to get back to his apartment. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. It helps us a lot.